Council. So I'm here today to recommend that Council approve my budget for 2019-20. This is the third budget as City Mayor of Salford that I've been required to deliver to this Council chamber. And it is a city that I'm immensely proud to serve. The City Council, as many of you know, continues to face a significant, challenging financial situation, which impacts directly on the services we are able to deliver to our residents and the people employed in our city to deliver those services. I believe this budget represents, as far as possible, a responsible and fair set of proposals. Let me first outline many of the technical elements of the budget I'm presenting to Council today. Firstly, I'm recommending an overall budget of £205.241 million for 1920. I'm also recommending a capital programme of £105.682 million again for 1920, using the resources set out in Part 3 of my report. In accordance with the formal resolution set out in Appendix 6, I'm proposing a council tax requirement of £107.909 million in accordance with the legislation, and a basic amount of council tax of £1,577.32, an amount for each valuation band in accordance with the legislation. I'm also proposing an amount of council tax for each valuation band in accordance with Section 30 and 36 of the Local Government Finance Act 1992. And I'm also recommending the Council approves the Housing Revenue Account budget for 2019-20 as set out in Part 2 of my report. Finally, from a technical point of view, I'm recommending the Council approves the Treasury Management Prudential Indicators for 2019-20 to 2020-21 as set out in Part 4 of my report. And I want to kind of turn to the main part of what is my speech on budget today. Let's make no mistake that the financial challenges facing this City Council continue to be significant. Despite national government statements to the contrary that austerity is over, I can assure members of this council it is far from over. At a time when we enter yet another spending review period for local government. In the 9 years of this government and consecutive government, Salford, this City Council, will have had to find £211 million within its budget by the end of 2019-20. I restate, £211 million. That's significant. It's over 50% cut in revenue support grant to this local authority. No council or organisation can lose 50% of its funding without that directly impacting on services. In fact, I go one step further and say that if this was a private sector business, we would have been forced to cease trading, the liquidators would have been brought in, and we would have had to have made all of our staff redundant. In 1920 alone, we have had to find a further saving of £13.06 million in order to deliver a balanced budget here today. I believe we have approached that challenge responsibly and earnestly, and with the mayoral team working all year round to bring to this chamber the budget that's before you today. It is not a challenge that either I or the mayoral team have taken lightly, and in many respects it's not a challenge we've enjoyed or relished in any way, shape or form. Nor do we take any joy from the proposals that we're actually setting out today. We cannot pretend that austerity hasn't hit this City Council and the people of our city hard. The national context behind all of this is a government that continues to conceal the impact of its funding decisions on the public. It's a government that fundamentally does not believe in the redistribution of wealth via taxation. that believes both personal and regional poverty is fundamentally due to people's own actions, and is seemingly unmoved by the depths of misery it has inflicted on the British public after 9 years of austerity. As a nation, we are condemned by the United Nations for policies which are depriving children of food. Our own studies here in Salford Council, working with the University of Salford, have shown how welfare reform is creating hidden young people in our city, living from the proceeds of petty crime, cash-in-hand jobs, and living through spates of homelessness. The government's economic plan has been roundly condemned by the international economic community. Austerity has been criticised by the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and by many other international institutions, as well as dozens of leading economists from around the world. It has been condemned also by the government's own Office of Budget Responsibility, the government organisation set up to enact the austerity agenda post-2008 crash. And interestingly, looking at some of our think tanks, we see that the UK economy is 100 billion smaller because of austerity, slower growth every year since 2010, and each person being nearly £1,500 a year worse off. Nationally, our infrastructure, as many of us know within this room, is failing, decimated by years of privatisation and burgeoning bureaucracy, which has arisen from a fragmentation of service provision and a fundamental belief in free market ideology. We are seemingly incapable as a nation of delivering on key projects, be that HS2, Crossrail, smart motorways, and so much more. And this government seems to be addicted to high-status vanity projects rather than the nitty-gritty of infrastructural improvements required up and down this country. For example, to ease traffic congestions on our roads. Salford, as many of you know in this chamber, is the 22nd most deprived local authority in the country. And that's according to the government's own index of multiple deprivation. And since deindustrialisation in the 80s and the 90s, Salford and many former industrial areas like it have genuinely struggled to develop alternative, highly skilled, well-paid economies, as successive national governments have predominantly focused their attention on London and the South East. This is further illustrated by 80% of housing programme funds currently operating through Homes England not being eligible for most local authorities in the north of the country. Combine this with the Tories' cruel and corrupt measures to give money to their own constituencies, the people of Salford have been utterly abandoned by this government. Take the Fair Funding Review as an example, much lauded by the Conservatives after their recent party conference heralding the end of austerity. We were told that this process was designed to make funding more equitable. In fact, it was a cheap excuse to pander to the home counties by enhancing the role of rurality in designating funds and removing considerations of deprivation and real need. Let me repeat that point. It is currently being proposed in the Fair Funding Review that deprivation is no longer considered to be an important methodological factor in allocating resources, with the government favouring an allocation of funds on a per head of population basis rather than actual need. So just to reiterate that, the Fair Funding Review, with an emphasis on fair, language is quite important here, is proposing that it is no longer important to consider relative deprivation in different local authority areas when it actually allocates funds. Dare I say to members of this council, that is fundamentally, morally and ethically not fair. Far from it. Further than this, the government's Fair Funding Review deems it more important to consider the specific needs of rural constituencies which on average have far higher personal and household incomes, i.e. increased ability to pay higher taxes. That is, considering the needs of those who are truly suffering. As millions queue up outside food banks, children arrive at schools without being fed, the homeless are forced into temporary accommodation, night shelters, with many sleeping rough on our streets with no place to call home. Our hospitals are falling into disarray, with our doctors, nurses and allied health professionals working under unsustainable pressure. Police are buckling under the pressure of huge increases in crime and diminished resources to put police on our streets and in our communities. And whilst local authorities are declaring bankruptcy, the government seems to be far more concerned with stuffing money into places like Surrey, Cambridge and Buckinghamshire than it is with tackling these urgent issues the country currently faces. And if that wasn't enough, another mechanism for diverting money back into the wealthiest areas of the country has been proposed. It's referred to as the Negative Revenue Support Grant. This is the idea that the wealthy areas that contribute more to the revenue support grant pot should get more out to cancel out the supposed disparity, fundamentally undermining the redistributive rationale of the revenue support grant. It is a policy designed to even further entrench inequality between regions and localities. Given these factors, our approach to this budget has been objective, detailed and open. We have listened to the public through our Talk Budget engagement about the things that matter to them. We have sought to protect vital services for our most vulnerable residents, reflecting our overriding commitment to a better and fairer Salford. We have undertaken a detailed review of all service budgets across the council. This has involved members, directors, our employees, trade unions, key partners and the community and voluntary sector. We have reviewed central provisions and the council's financial reserves and how these can be used to support the projection within the budget and obviously protect vital services. We have sought wherever possible to maximise the opportunities from the new transformational savings, efficiencies, new partnerships and additional income. This is a city I'm immensely proud to call home, and I believe all members share that pride in this council chamber. It's a city with a proud identity, an incredible history and a tightly knit community. A city which, despite the obstacles, is still on a path to growth and success. The decisions this council has taken over the past few decades to invest in regeneration of the city are beginning to pay dividends. Business rates have increased by 2.7 million annually in the last 2 years, council tax by 13.5 million. We've collected 16 million in Section 106 contributions since 2014 and 48 million new homes bonus between 2014-15 and 2019-20. This money is a lifeline. Without it, our services would be hit even harder by the cuts. Ambitious investment in Greengate and New Bailey is building the council's asset base, bringing in an anticipated 7.5 million profit over the next 25 years, plus generating jobs and business rates, building the economy of Salford. Our City Council is not simply sitting back and watching as Tory underfunding drives us into decline. We are building and investing for the future of our city and its people. But despite gains, we simply cannot recoup all we have lost through local rates. Local rates, as we know in this chamber, is a regressive form of taxation, with those with least income being expected to pay a larger proportion of what they earn. In line with the expectations and the spending calculations from the Ministry of Housing, communities and local government and the Treasury, this year we are inevitably being forced to increase council tax by 2.99% and the adult social care precept by a further 1%. As we still wait for the Green Paper on how the government nationally intend on tackling the crisis in social care. This raise helps in covering the increased costs of children in care, which many of you know in this chamber is up 9.1 million since 2010, as well as discretionary support services, winter fuel packages and care for the elderly. These services are vital. Without them, Salford residents would face destitution. High quality health and care services are absolutely vital for our residents and for the economy and social future of this city. This is why I'm including within our budget approach proposals for greater joint working between the Council and Salford's NHS Clinical Commissioning Group. We are fortunate to have an outstanding CCG and hospital within our city. We already have a strong history of working together to improve the quality and effectiveness of health and social care. With the CCG, we want to build on that strong history and have brought forward proposals to create a £600 million integrated fund for health and care, bringing together much of our mutual funding for children, adults, public health and primary care. Our proposals in many respects are groundbreaking. Once again, Salford will be leading the way nationally in innovation and new ways of working to protect vital services for our residents. We're not waiting for the government or anyone else to show or tell us how it is done. These reforms are essential to best protect both health and care services for our residents. By bringing our resources together under clear and robust joint decision-making arrangements, we can achieve improved health and social outcomes for the residents in this city. Commissioning more integrated and proactive care, making sure people can see the right professionals in the right place with the right skills and experience, protecting frontline services, making better use of our limited resources and delivering improved quality, safety and outcomes for patients. This builds on the proven track record through our pooled budget arrangements with the CCG for adults, an arrangement that allows us to realise £1.8 million towards our budget challenges for 2019-20 through an agreed reduction in the Council's contribution. Savings in public health will be made through changes to the re-specification of contracts. We're working to minimise the impacts on residents and ensure public health services continue to support the most vulnerable in our city. I can reassure Council that our further integration proposals do not involve any transfer of functions, responsibilities or staff to the CCG or a new separate organisation. The Council will continue to hold its responsibilities for the provision, safety and quality of children's services. We are doing all of this and ensuring we can make the most of the skills, the expertise and the capacity of both organisations and make the best possible investment decisions to ensure we keep the right high quality health and care services in our city. Last year I spoke of a national crisis in funding for children's services, and I noticed only yesterday in the national press this was again highlighted, the chronic underfunding of children's services up and down the country as a consequence of austerity and local government cuts. And 12 months on from last year's budget, I have to say to this Council, nothing has actually changed. The impact of welfare changes, new burdens on Council as a result of government policy and legislative changes, and the growing number of children in our city continue to mean growing pressures on the Council's budgets for children services. Despite clear evidence from Salford and councils up and down the country, the government continues to fail to provide anything like adequate levels of funding. We invested an additional £4.5 million in our services for children in 2018-19 in recognition of the significant pressures faced in order to meet the needs of children and their families. This was a decision to invest in our residents. Despite this investment, the area of our budget continues to face ongoing budgetary pressures and challenges. But we will continue to make decisions for children, young people and families based on a professional assessment of need. Whilst the service will contribute 1.9 million of savings as a result of proposals made today, we'll continue to prioritise early help and prevention and high-level statutory intervention where that is needed. Our investment in core services such as street cleaning, highways maintenance, the upkeeps of parks in the city and our fantastic open spaces, leisure, planning and building control will still continue, supporting the essential fabric of public life within the city of Salford. These are all things that residents have told us that matter to them. We continue to invest in our libraries and leisure facilities in order that Salford residents can enjoy the leisure and cultural offer which contributes to health and well-being and makes Salford such a vibrant place to live, work and play. And we are taking advantage of capital investments to purchase electric vehicles for our operational services, such as for dog wardens and pest control, investing in better air quality and reducing carbon footprint from the council's operations. Every organisation needs strong enabling support services, enabling the front line to focus on delivery. But those support services need to be as effective and as efficient as possible. This is as true for Salford City Council as it is for any large organisation up and down the country. We are committed to reviewing transactional services across the organisation, maximising the use of technology and automation to realise efficiencies and enabling staff to provide greater face-to-face support to residents, something we know is important to residents. And at the core of the organisation, we will continue to provide effective financial planning and stewardship, workforce and organisational development, digital development, a cohesive communication strategy and an effective management of legal democratic elections and strategic procurement functions. These functions will continue to work cohesively so as to ensure we can protect investment in frontline services. After 9 years of austerity and consistent cuts, this year's budget is the hardest and most painful to date. We have been cutting to the bone for several years now, and many decisions have been taken from necessity rather than choice. We could not deliver the high level of service we provide to our residents if it was not for the commitment, pride and passion of our own council workforce. They too have felt the impact of austerity. Throughout this time, our staff have remained totally committed to the residents of this city. For that, I thank them for their dedication, their commitment and work within this city council and for the people of this city. They understand and appreciate that the welfare of the people is indeed the highest law in our city. This, as I'm sure many of you in this chamber will agree, is a horrendous reality to be faced for a local authority. It is through all of this that we work together, and it's incumbent upon us all to set our priorities and our corresponding budget locally. So I ask the council to agree the budget before them today. Thank you very much.